Some crimes happen in a moment, an impulse, an uncontrolled situation, a sudden crack appearing in a life that seemed normal. But there are also crimes that are prepared, repeated, and carried out like a ritual. At the scene, police found a pair of high heels neatly placed near the edge of the highway. No drag marks, no sounds, only a knotted shoelace lying directly beneath the heel. Elsewhere, a homeless person went missing. When they entered the suspect's room, the chessboard was precisely marked. Each square carried the name of a person. In another case, all victims had first and last names beginning with the same letter. No one understood why, only that he documented it, carefully, consistently, in a worn notebook. No one survived to describe what happened in the final moment, but what remained were always the same signs. An object taken, and then, at some point, reappearing in a place no one expected. A glass, a pair of shoes, a length of tightened cord, as if they were essential elements of the ritual. When a behavior becomes repetitive, consistent, precise, motive no longer matters, no longer desire, no longer rage, no longer deception. Only the ritual remains, something repeated to the point where even the one performing it no longer has control. And within that ritual, something slipped beyond the boundaries of the human. No one knows why they do it. Only that they cannot stop. And sometimes the ritual begins with objects so familiar. A shoelace, a strip of duct tape, a habit of folding compartments in a certain order. No one notices anything wrong until they've looked long enough, looked enough times. Roger Kibbe. By day, he was a carpenter, worked at a small shop specializing in wood repair in San Francisco. Quiet, punctual, kept to himself. He spoke little, but wasn't unfriendly. Some even found him likable. If asked for directions, he always gave precise answers. Lived alone, ate simply, drove an old car, but kept it clean. Every morning, he wiped the dashboard, the glove compartment always tidy. Inside, it was a transparent plastic bag containing miscellaneous items. Scissors, cloth tape, shoelaces. The first time anyone noticed him was during a random traffic stop. Police intended to issue a citation for a dim headlight, but when they opened the trunk, they saw the plastic bag. Nothing seemed out of place, but something made the officer's gaze linger a little longer. A long shoelace, tightly knotted, wrapped 3 times, the ends sealed with black tape. No one thought much of it. Just a peculiar man. He was born in 1939, raised in a large family in the suburbs of Fresno. His father was strict, used cords to tie the children whenever they disobeyed. His mother did not intervene. He once said in a flat voice, "I learned how to tie cords from my father, not to hold things, but to hold silence." As he grew older, he kept a piece of cord from that time, hid it in a wooden box next to his woodworking tools. He didn't speak much to anyone, but he documented everything. An old friend recalled, "I once saw him write in a notebook, Day 12, knot tied 3 times, brown hair, No reaction. I thought it was an art project. Between 1977 and 1986, in the Sacramento and Stockton areas, several cases of missing women occurred. They were found in the outskirts, by the roadside, under bridges, in ditches. None of them had been robbed. In some cases, the victims were unclothed, but their handbags remained untouched. There was one common feature: wrists often bound with shoelaces, sometimes from athletic wear, sometimes from men's shoes, all tied using the same knot, triple twist, sealed. He didn't use weapons, didn't use brute force. He prepared, controlled, and withdrew. Victims' hair was sometimes partially cut. Shoes would vanish. In one case, a pair was found at a fence over 30 kilometers from the scene, placed symmetrically, heels turned inward. Police failed to connect the cases for nearly a decade. They believed them to be isolated incidents. Not until a teenage girl escaped from his car, leaving claw marks on the back seat, were DNA samples matched. Inside the vehicle, they found a 73 centimeter shoelace, knotted, still holding strands of hair. When arrested, Roger Kibbe did not resist. He asked, "Did you keep the cord?" The investigator asked, "Which cord?" He replied, "The one I made. Everyone has their style. That one's mine." In the interrogation file, one audio recording includes the following exchange. "Do you know how many victims there were?" "I didn't count." "Why use a shoelace?" "Because it's soft but tight enough. And because no one thinks it matters." In court, Roger showed no expression. Throughout the trial, he stared at a scratch on the table. The public defender said, "The defendant does not argue, does not deny, but also does not confess. He is simply silent." Psychological experts suggested he exhibited signs of personality disorder, but no one was certain. He spoke little. He showed no reaction to the images of the victims. When being escorted from the courtroom, he turned back and told the investigator, "The cord you kept, don't untie the knot. It won't tie back the same way again." After he was imprisoned, 3 more cases were matched by DNA. But at least 4 cases were never resolved. The common detail: the cord used, no longer present at the scene, as if someone had taken it. In 2009, a bag was discovered in the basement of an old hotel slated for demolition. Inside was a black shoelace, tied in the same triple knot, sealed with tape. Next to it was a pair of gray high heels, one shoe missing. Police made no further announcement, but the original investigator, now retired, left a note in his memoir. "I'm not sure how many people he ever encountered, only that. Every time I see a tightly knotted cord, I still look twice." Few pairs of shoes were recovered after Roger Kibbe's cases. They disappeared from the scenes, from the victims, even from the evidence logs. Only a few were found again, in places unrelated to the killer's known movements, placed in correct alignment, cleaned, no trace of blood, as if someone was collecting or sorting, from the cord to the shoes, from an accessory to the act, to the object becoming the center of the act. If Roger Kibbe needed a cord to complete the ritual, then the next man began with the shoes themselves, not to conceal, but to preserve as a part of himself. He lived in Salem, Oregon, a quiet neighborhood, wide lawns, cars parked near porches, gates always locked but no guard dogs. By day, Jerry Brudos was a refrigeration technician, steady job, regular income, wife at home raising children. No one complained about him. Just a quiet man, rarely seen outside. Only one detail raised curiosity. No one had ever entered his garage. He kept the door locked, always cleaned it himself. At night, neighbors occasionally saw flickering lights, as if someone was taking photographs, but no one asked. In that place, people left each other alone. He was born in 1939. Signs of deviation appeared early. At age 5, he was caught by his mother wearing the neighbor's high heels. She punished him severely, threw the shoes away, and made him stand outside in the cold. He stood there for hours, did not cry, did not argue, only looked down at his feet. Later, in his statement, he said, "Those shoes were prettier than the person wearing them." At age 12, he began collecting shoes. Started by scavenging from trash piles. Then he began breaking in, took nothing else, only shoes. Sometimes photos of women's feet, if he found any. Each item was stored carefully in a separate box, marked with the date, location, and color. On one occasion, he wrote, "Black pair, T-strap, taken from house number 48, no one awake." From 1968 to 1969, 4 young women went missing in the Portland area. All disappeared after leaving work. No crime scene, no witnesses. One of them was found weeks later. Her body had been dumped in a river, limbs bruised, clothing incomplete. But one detail stood out. Her feet had been washed clean and her nails trimmed. Police did not see a connection between the cases. But in one victim's home, they discovered the pair of high heels she usually wore to work was missing. In another case, a personal photograph had been cut, the lower legs removed. No one understood why. No one noticed that detail until investigators searched Jerry Brudos' garage. Inside was a storage room for shoes, 86 pairs categorized by style, each placed on a wooden shelf, labeled in pencil on the sole. Size, date, acquired, condition. Some matched the missing shoes reported by victims' families. There were also numerous photographs of women's feet lit carefully, like catalog images from a magazine. A small refrigerator was locked inside. Within it, authorities found a body part from one of the victims, preserved in a vacuum-sealed bag. Brudos did not flee. When police arrived, he simply said, "I figured, probably because I kept the shoes." He gave his statement in a flat tone, did not deny, did not resist, only explained. He said when he saw a pair of shoes, he didn't think about the person wearing them. "I just wanted them to stay still, not leave, not react." At trial, he chose to represent himself in part. The court-appointed attorney described him as a man living so deeply in his internal world that he no longer distinguishes real from imagined. Brudos offered no rebuttal. When asked, "Do you feel any guilt?" he remained silent, then looked down at his feet. That day, he wore a pair of beige women's shoes, a perfect fit. His wife claimed to know nothing. She and the children had never been allowed in the garage. She only recalled Jerry frequently taking plastic bags of shoes to a nearby laundromat. When asked why she never questioned it, she simply said, "I thought it was a kind of collection." When the home was seized, police transferred the entire shoe inventory to an evidence storage facility. But within months, reports indicated that 3 pairs had gone missing from the locker. No signs of forced entry. No record of withdrawal. To this day, no explanation has been given. One investigator once said during a closed meeting, "We think he chose each pair of shoes not to keep, but to replace what he lacked, piece by piece." In Jerry Brudos' garage, police found a strange photograph. A pair of legs in high heels, standing on a black and white checkered tile floor. The shot taken from above, composed precisely like a chessboard. At first, no one noticed, until an investigator from Moscow saw the photo and said, "That floor looks like the Bitsevsky platform." In Russia, no one kept shoes. No one photographed feet. There was only one man who, whenever someone disappeared, would mark a square on a chessboard. If Brudos needed to keep an object to recreate, then the next one only needed to count until all 64 squares were filled. He lived in southern Moscow, near the edge of Bitsevsky Park, an urban forest spanning nearly 2,700 hectares, wedged between Soviet-era apartment blocks. Alexander Pichushkin worked at a local supermarket, night shift. Every day after work, he walked into the woods, carried nothing but a thin plastic bag containing a cheap bottle of vodka and several loaves of bread. People recognized his face the way they recognized the benches in the park. No one remembered his name. No one asked questions. A homeless man once said, "He drank alone, never smiled. But if someone asked, he shared the vodka." Pichushkin was born in 1974. As a child, he once fell from a swing. His head struck the concrete hard. After that, uncontrollable fits of rage began to appear. At school, he played chess alone, spoke to no one. A teacher described him as a boy who didn't play to win, only to end the game. From 2001 to 2006, at least 49 people went missing around Bitsevsky Park. They were homeless individuals, the elderly, alcoholics, or people no one waited for. Police did not link the disappearances until the first body was found. It was a man, about 50 years old, discovered beneath the mud at the bottom of a dry well in the forest. The body had decomposed, but beside it lay a red plastic bottle cap placed neatly on a tile. In his jacket pocket was a folded piece of paper. "Let's play again. Sasha." Then came the second, lying flat, hands by the sides, eyes open. No signs of struggle. Nothing stolen. Then the third, found in a dry trench, head facing the forest gate. Beside him, half a piece of bread and a coin. None were buried, none were bound, none were carefully concealed. Each body appeared placed in a pre-arranged position. Cold, balanced, not random. At several scenes, police found footprints around the edges of wells or on muddy ground. Closed circles, unhurried, as if the perpetrator had stood there for some time, observing before leaving. No signs of struggle, no signs of resistance, only the body and a single object left behind. A bottle cap, a slip of paper, sometimes a white chess piece. The sole surviving victim recounted that he was offered vodka, offered to play chess, then asked, "If you disappeared from this world, would anyone remember you?" The man replied, "Yes." He fell silent, then turned away. 3 weeks later, the man filed a report. During a search of the apartment, police found a wooden chessboard, 64 squares, 61 of which had been marked with a red X. Beneath each square was a slip of paper listing a name, a date, and the symbol plus. Next to it was a notebook, a corresponding list of names, with no addresses, no explanations. Inside the cupboard, they found vodka, dried bread, and objects previously seen at crime scenes. Red bottle caps, torn white paper, half-burned cigarette packs. When arrested, he did not resist. When asked about the board, he said, "I wanted to fill the whole board. Each person, a move, miss a square, and the game will never be complete." At trial, he recounted each case in detail. The time, the place, the final words. His tone was flat, expressionless. One expert stated, "He didn't seem remorseful, nor proud. He was simply compiling a list." He did not request leniency. When sentenced to life in prison, he asked only, "Can I keep the board?" Police retained the board as evidence. It was placed into storage. Squares 62 to 64 were blank. 3 years later, during inventory, a staff member noticed square 64 had been marked. No one signed it out. No surveillance footage. No explanation. An investigator left one final note in the internal file. Sometimes there is no answer, only this. To him, each person was a piece, and none could be left out. Pichushkin's wooden chessboard was eventually sealed in the evidence archive. 61 squares marked, 3 left blank. Then one day, without a word, the last square bore a red mark. No further questions were asked, because everyone understood. For some, action is never random. In California, halfway around the world from Moscow, another man was compiling his own list, not by chess squares, but by letters. CCRRSS. Each name was a choice. No one knew why the matching initials mattered so much. Only that. He called it wonderful. Police found the notebook during a search of a small house in Reno, Nevada. The resident was a man in his 70s, named Joseph Nazo. Lived alone, quietly. Received Social Security benefits. Used to work as an amateur photographer. He was under surveillance for shoplifting groceries, a minor infraction not expected to lead anywhere. But inside the house, among dozens of dusty cardboard boxes, they discovered a thin, spiral-bound notebook with yellowing edges. On the cover were 4 handwritten words: "The Wonderful List." The first page listed 10 women's names. No addresses, no occupations, no notes. But each name shared one trait. The first and last initials were the same: Carmen Colon, Roxane Rogash, Tracy Tafoya, Pamela Parsons, and 6 more names, followed only by a single line at the bottom: Q. Still looking. Investigators cross-referenced the names with unsolved crime files. Each one matched a real victim, all previously discovered in different parts of California, from the outskirts of Oakland to Santa Rosa, from vacant lots by the highway to dry season grass fields. The way they were found showed a chilling consistency. One woman lay on the grass, head tilted to one side, coat folded neatly beneath her back. Another, discovered by the roadside, had her hair combed, lipstick faintly visible on her lips. Beside her, a plastic bag containing a plastic bracelet, a blurred photograph, and an unopened roll of Kodak film. There were no clear signs of violence, no struggle, nothing was stolen. One investigator wrote in the report, "No one was hidden, no one was discarded, each was placed." As if someone were staging a photograph no one would ever see. Joseph Nasso was born in 1934. He served in the Air Force. After his discharge, he studied commercial photography. He took pictures for small fairs, local festivals, sometimes for free. His camera was old, fixed lens, always carefully cleaned. Locals remembered the old man with a camera bag who liked talking to older women and often gave people rides. No one knew if he was connected to the names in the notebook. But in his closet, police found a box of undeveloped negatives. At least 2 images matched known victims' faces. The photos had been taken weeks, even months, before they disappeared. Additionally, in his home was a box of personal items: lipstick, hair ties, lighters, plastic rings, all unremarkable, worthless objects. But in each case, one such item had been reported missing from the scene. No one knew why he kept them. No one knew when he took them. When arrested, Joseph Nasso did not react. "I figured," he said. "You found the notebook." In the interrogation record, he was asked why he chose names with matching initials. He answered, "They sound smooth, easy to remember. They have rhythm." He did not deny, but he did not confess. At trial, he represented himself, spoke at length, structured, coherent, but no one understood what point he was trying to make. When asked about each woman, he mentioned only the name, without emotion, without explanation. A psychological expert described him as someone with a need to reconstruct the world according to a private structure: repetitive, orderly, undisturbed, not driven by emotion, not by delusion, but by a silent belief in order. The wonderful list was entered into evidence. The last page had a torn corner. Only the letter Q remained. No surname, no date, no note. No one was found matching that character. No one knew whether he had chosen the person yet, or was still searching. But in another notebook, later discovered, a single line was written separately. When it reaches 10, stop. No one knew if he had stopped. No one was certain he ever intended to. An investigator wrote in the final internal memo, "There are cases that require no conclusion because they are a sequence of symbols, not meant to say anything, only meant to be in order." Joseph Nasso had a list, had letters, had rules. Each case followed a structure only he understood and obeyed. Each object retained, each name written down, each act repeated. But then came one person, with nothing recorded, no arrangement, no selection by logic, only an unlocked door and someone stepping through, as if the world had opened just for him, as if nothing was real, until the blood began to flow. In the eastern part of Sacramento, during the winter of 1977, residents began complaining about small things. The sound of backyard gates opening at night, muddy footprints on the welcome mat, kitchen items slightly out of place that no one remembered touching. No one called the police. Nothing was clearly missing, but people started locking their doors more carefully. They didn't know that Richard Chase had been walking through the neighborhood every night, carrying a small notebook, marking each house where the door was left unlocked. Richard Chase was born in 1950, raised in a middle-class family. As a teenager, he believed people were tracking him through electric waves, believed his heart had stopped beating, that his blood was degrading, that his skull was splitting apart in pieces. After an incident involving injecting animal blood into himself, he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Doctors diagnosed dissociative-type paranoid schizophrenia. But after a few months, he was released back into society. Alone in a small apartment filled with odor, he began adjusting his own treatment regimen. Drinking animal blood, mixing raw organs with soda, and using a small knife to extract tissue samples from his own body. In December 1977, the first victim was found. Ambrose Griffin, 51, was shot in front of his home while carrying groceries from the car to the kitchen. No signs of robbery, no struggle. Police considered it a possible random shooting, until 3 weeks later, someone reported a neighboring apartment that had been silent for too long. Theresa Wallane, 22, was 3 months pregnant. The back door was unlocked. Her body was discovered in the living room. There were signs the body had been moved post-mortem. Clothing was partially torn. 2 kitchen knives were missing. Beside the body was an opened milk carton, placed upright on the floor. Forensics noted, signs indicated internal organs had been removed, and the blood within the abdominal cavity had vanished without clear cause. No personal items were taken, except for a single drinking glass from the dining table, which had been cleaned and turned upside down. Less than a week later, police were called to the Miroth residence. Inside was a scene that defied description. Evelyn Miroth, 36, was found in the bedroom. Beside her was the body of her 6-year-old nephew. In the bathroom, the body of Dan Meredith, a family friend, was found slumped near the sink. The front door showed no signs of forced entry. One of the rear side doors was slightly ajar. No valuables were missing. But in the living room, police found a cushion bearing a clear indentation, as if someone had sat there for a long time without speaking. On the table remained a folded napkin, blood-stained but squared with precision. In the kitchen, the refrigerator was open. Several organs from the victims were missing. No cooking utensils were found. No knives, no pans. But on the floor, a glass baby food jar had been carefully placed, completely empty inside. Police followed the trail of blood out into the backyard, where it disappeared. Neighbors reported hearing no screams. Only one person mentioned the sound of a door slamming, then complete silence. 2 days later, Chase was arrested while returning to his apartment. In the trunk of his car was a box containing gloves, an empty baby bottle, a notebook, and a knife with dried blood. Inside his apartment, police recovered several objects belonging to the victims: a child's wallet, a Happy New Year card with the name Evelyn, and a photograph with the face obscured. On the kitchen counter, there was a jug containing a mixture of blood and Coca-Cola. On the wall, a sentence written in pencil: "I am rotting. I need blood to hold myself together." When asked why he entered other people's homes, Chase simply replied, "The door wasn't locked. That means I was invited." At trial, he offered no defense, no arguments. He only repeated one sentence across multiple interrogation sessions: "I had to do it. If I didn't, I would melt." He was sentenced to death, but he did not wait for execution. 3 years later, Richard Chase was found dead in his cell, the result of a medication overdose. The drug had been administered regularly to manage his delusions. Next to the body, they found the plastic cup from the previous night's dinner. It had been cleaned, turned upside down on the floor. One investigator wrote in the final report, "With subjects like him, there is no selection, no specific target, no system. He did not hunt. He did not repeat any clear pattern. He only passed through unlocked doors and stepped inside." We often think that evil must have a shape, a face, a scream, a bloodstain. But what if it's just a repeated act, unnoticed? What if the simple act of wiping a glass, placing a pair of shoes back in position, or marking a square on a chessboard was the clearest declaration of all? Throughout the cases we've just seen, no one witnessed horror. Only small objects, taken then quietly returned: a shoelace, a bottle cap, a folded piece of paper. They made no sound, but they repeated. No one asked why. No one raised questions. No one considered that a meaningless action, when performed again and again, could be the ritual of something decaying from within. An upside-down glass on the floor, a notebook with names left unfinished, a square still waiting to be marked. All of them remain silent, waiting for someone patient enough to connect the pieces. This episode ends here, but the ending carries no final period. If there's a detail that unsettled you, Leave it in the comments. It might be something others have missed. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you just might miss the next episode, where we no longer search for a killer through his actions, but through the harmless habits he couldn't stop repeating.